Good morning. I'm Katie Weaver, and I have the pleasure of serving as GMAR's 2021 president. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here and share with us. We are excited to learn from Dr. Yoon today, but first, a little housekeeping. Be sure to open up your chat box so you can chat with other attendees and submit questions during the of our time together. You will not be able to submit questions or participate in the chat box logged into your events account. We are recording the session, so you'll be able to go back and watch it later. And we are very excited to have over people registered for this event today. So if we aren't able to get those questions, we apologize, but we'll do our best to do so. As we allow more people to come into the chat room, or I'm sorry, to join us, I want to give you a little bit of information about who we are at GMAR. The Greater Metropolitan Association of Realtors is the largest local real estate association in the state of Michigan, with over 10 members, mentoring, professional level programming, partnering, and advocacy, products, camaraderie, and so much more. GMAR offers it all. We offer ourselves from other local associations by providing member benefits that help our realtors provide the highest quality of service and standards. Some of these benefits include community outreach, political advocacy, continuing media relations, and arbitration services. So visit GMAR online. Check out our new website to learn more. Also like us on Facebook at facebook.com, GMAR Online, and watch this short video to see why we believe GMAR is the best. And now, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Lawrence Yoon as our special speaker. Dr. Yoon is the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Research at the National of Realtors. He regularly provides commentary on real estate market trends for over 1.4 million realtors. Dr. Yoon has appeared as a guest on C-SPAN's Washington Journal and is a regular columnist in the Forbes website. We are delighted to host him today as he shares his economic predictions with us. Welcome, Dr. Yoon.
Thank you, President Katie, for inviting. What a great activity that GMAR. So I always appreciate all the volunteer leadership and the realtors in the locality for community activity, as well as important political engagement. As you know, real estate is very important for real estate. And 2020, in the early months of the pandemic, quite a scare. First, the virus, we were unsure. I hope everyone came out safely and still practicing safety measures. But we really did not know. You know, you touch a doorknob and accidentally touch your face. They said, well, it said a death sentence. There was a lot of some unclear information at the very beginning, but also for the real estate. What's going to happen? Are we going to face another foreclosure crisis? We had the lockdown, everything froze. Now with the economy, with so many job losses, Are we in for another foreclosure crisis after the harsh one that we experienced back in 2008 through 2010? But what do you know? Once the economy reopened, the buyers were eyeballing record low mortgage rates, too good to give up, and home sales recover and then some, going way above pre-pandemic activity. Home prices are also rising strongly consequently, and real estate has shown a very positive sign and certainly a good contributor to overall economic activity. I speak better with PowerPoint slides, so I'm going to put that onto the screen. Bear with me as I do that right now. So hold 1 second. And let me see. All right, so there we are. So home sales. This is the existing home sales comprising about 80 to 90% of all home sales. And before the pandemic, it looks to be little up, little down, no meaningful changes. Then you see the sudden collapse during the lockdown period. People froze. Only activity you could conduct was possible virtual tour or maybe closing table out in a parking lot with people well separated by several cars. Then once the economy reopened, you see the surge way above the pre-pandemic. But note how the activity appears to be weakening somewhat. It is still above the pre-pandemic, but it is no longer the 20% or 30% above the pre-pandemic activity. Now it is only about 5%, 10% above pre-pandemic. You still say this is a welcoming news, knowing that it is still running very solid, but it is no longer the super strong activity as we have seen before. Super strong in terms of sales transactions, because realtors, certainly this is what you are looking for. Get your clients into the new home or help your clients sell their home so they can make the next move. But the transaction activity beginning to show topping out pattern. If we look at the builder activity, this is new home sales, meaning newly constructed home sales. Also showing similar pattern of now way above the pre-pandemic and still even in recent months showing less of a weakening. I mean, it's showing, sort of a sideways movement, but comfortably above from 1 year ago. Home building activity is smaller market share, about 10% or 15%, depending upon locality. Home builders are very friendly to realtors during a market downturn. So home builders throughout 2020, last year, were saying, realtors, please bring your clients, and here's the income for you for bringing the clients. But now, builders, at least some, are getting fussier to say, we don't need realtor help anymore. We can sell it on our own because housing demand is so strong. It's a pity if that is the case, because I think people need to be fairly consistent about their business relationship. But the builders are simply responding to this strong demand, so strong demand, they are essentially saying they can do it on their own. Let's keep in mind, when the builders build a home, it also automatically helps realtors indirectly. Generally, new home constructions are more larger size, more expensive home. It's not for the first-time buyers. So it's a trade-up buyers. So as people trade up into their newly constructed home, they are leaving behind their old home into the MLS, and that's where the realtors would conduct their business. But let's hope that the builders do the normal business relationship and provide realtors with the referral fees once they bring their clients, or I should say the normal fees that once the realtors bring their clients. So why are the home sales, at least on the existing homes, beginning to show some topping off pattern? Well, here is this chart. We simply don't have enough homes to go around, not enough homes available for sale. Record low, all-time low. I ask many brokers across the country the simple hypothetical question. If you had 20% more homes available for sale, would you have 20% increase in home sales? And everyone said, yes, absolutely. There are plenty of buyers. So when you see a topping off pattern, it is just simply due to the lack of inventory. If we had more inventory, we can have home sales not topping out, but continuing to increase. Also, use this chart for some of your clients who are showing some concern about the marketplace. Concern as to, is the market in a housing market bubble and therefore could potentially decline? Explain to your clients that we are fundamentally different now compared to what happened in 2007, 2008. Just look at the inventory. Back then, inventory levels were essentially 4 or 5 times higher than what it is now. And therefore, we had an abundance of supply. Today, we have undersupply. One key difference. Second key difference is back then, there was a loose, risky subprime lending. Today, people who are taking out mortgages have to meet these criteria. Debt to income ratio, the LTV ratio has to match up. So we don't have those risky mortgages, fortunately. So fundamentally different. In the Google search, how are we in a housing market bubble is one of the top search phrases. So I'm sure some of your clients or potential clients are having that concern. And one way to reduce that anxiety is show this chart to say we are in a fundamentally different market. Also, the inventory by price category shows a unique pattern. Inventory is short essentially at the lower price points. On homes priced under $100,000, significant decline. The next price point, 100 to 250, I consider this to be the prime first-time buyer activity. And look how much of a decline in that inventory. And then as we move up the price points, the inventory declines are not as severe. And in fact, in the $1 million and over, we actually have more inventory, more homes available for sale on $1 million plus this year versus the pre-pandemic conditions. So where are the sales happening and not happening? Here it is. Sales are generally happening where there is inventory or the shortage is less severe. But once you go to the lower price buckets, essentially no homes for sale, so transactions are not occurring. And that is why it is important to ensure that we have increased supply so that more transactions, especially for the first-time buyers, availability occurs. The President Biden is proposing infrastructure plan. The Republican Senate is trying to negotiate. Certainly, we need to fix the roads. We need to fix the bridges. But with some of the infrastructure spending bill can be dedicated for perhaps repurposing some of the dilapidated housing units. As you go into the Detroit city proper, as you know, some of the homes could use some funding to rehabilitate because it doesn't necessarily have to be new home construction. It could be simply repurposing some of the old units or dedicating some remodeling spending on the old units so we can get supply that way. I know they're in negotiation. I know there are many other components to it, but let's see how it goes. I hope people can agree on the need for the fixing the bridges, roads, and I would say we need more housing supply. So let's see if we can do. Now, other areas is that the people would say there's too much regulation, too much, for example, land use regulation and the water rights. If there's a puddle on the ground, some people say no, you cannot build a home in that area. Well, that limits supply. So we should also consider way to reduce regulation so the builders can become more active and supply more homes. Demand is strong, but the inventory is not there, meaning that supply and demand is not in equilibrium. we are in a seller's market. Home prices in the greater Detroit area is rising at double-digit price appreciation. Before the pandemic, prices are rising roughly 4% a year, but now it's rising at 12%. I would not be surprised if in some neighborhood it's actually up 20%, because this is showing a tremendous imbalance with strong demand, lack of supply, pushing up prices. Certainly a very good news for recent home buyers as they're getting equity, and longtime homeowners. They are automatically seeing their retirement wealth rising as homeowners are building wealth through price appreciation. But it can be frustrating for the first-time buyers. First, they're not participating in this wealth, and second, it's becoming more expensive to buy, and they're concerned about potentially being priced out of the market. But the price is running very solidly in the current market. So why do we have housing shortage? And it is due to the fact that home building activity, housing starts, has been under historical average for multiple years. Let me go back all the way to the beginning of the chart, 1960. Sometimes home building activity is little above or little below, but not for multiple years. It's only 3 or 4 years where it could be above or below, and it sort of bounces around to show that housing market do go through cycles, up, down. But look what has happened from 2007. We have been under, and then under for 14 straight years. And the cumulative effect of underproduction is we simply don't have enough homes for sale. My forecast for 2021 and 2022 in the red bar shows we are climbing above the historical average, but this is still not able to totally compensate for all the underproduction that's happening. So at least we are moving in the right direction. Some people ask, when are we going to get more inventory? I would say that you will begin to see meaningfully more inventory in late autumn. First, there's a seasonal decline in the demand, but also home builders, they are putting up more homes, but it takes time, 5 months, 8 months to complete the home. I know that the builders are facing special challenges. Lumber prices having soared, triple of what it was under normal circumstances. Other material prices, cement that you need to put it on the foundation, cement prices are rising. So all that is contributing to some delays in housing start to housing completion, but at least there is a willingness for the builders to want to build more homes. Simply, it may take a little longer to bring in the supply now than before under normal circumstances. So we need more inventory, but also we should be cautious about rising mortgage rates. Red line is the mortgage rates, and it is beginning to show little uplift from the absolute low that occurred in November, December, January time period. If you had a client who purchased a home back in, say, December, congratulate them. They got the absolute low mortgage rates. Today, it is a little bit above, averaging around 3%. By Christmas, we may actually hit 3.5%. Don't be surprised. So we are in a rising interest rate environment. So why is the mortgage rate rising? Well, let's look at the green line. Green line is what you hear from Washington regarding Federal Reserve policy. They are all in maximum liquidity policy, interest rate at 0, the green line. That 0 interest rate, by the way, is not for you and me, it's for the banking industry lending short-term back and forth. But essentially, it's a 0 interest rate to filter in to keep the interest rates down generally. And Federal Reserve has indicated they will keep that green line at 0 for the next year and maybe even 2 years. They're in no hurry to raise that green line interest rates. But the blue line is rising. So what is that middle blue line? Blue line is 10-year US government interest rate. US government borrows money, and right now people who are funding the US government, whether it is the Wall Street, it could be mom and pop who are buying 10-year treasury bond as part of their investment portfolio. It could be the Chinese government. So there is a global the purchasers of the US 10-year treasury, and it is showing rise. And why is it rising? Well, because we have had stimulus after stimulus after stimulus, raising the deficit and national debt at all-time high. It is also being partly funded by printing of the money, so the inflation is also rising. So if you are lending the money to the US government, you are saying, I am getting a little nervous here. High debt, rising deficit. Only way I'm going to lend you the money is you have to pay me a little higher interest rates. And that is why the blue line is rising, partly due to the fact that some of the global investors are demanding higher interest rates. When the blue line rises, generally the red line rises. And the red line or the mortgage rate is what you are concerned with. So therefore, if the people get more concerned about the deficit, then the mortgage rate will automatically rise along with that. Now, the reason for the deficit, again, is trying to help fix the economy, stimulus package under President Trump, stimulus package under President Biden. All of this is to support the economy, get the economy going, but it's not a free lunch. It's higher budget deficit, and it's beginning to push up interest rates. Another concern that can impact mortgage rate is rising inflation. I put this article in your latest Realtor magazine. So in your mailbox, I'm sure you received the Realtor magazine. My column, I explain about the inflation beginning to rise. And it is right now way above the key 2% line. That horizontal red line is 2%. And generally speaking, economists say, let's not go above that 2%. NAR President Charlie Oppler recently had a meeting with the White House staff and raised this concern that inflation is getting larger. How do you view it? And the White House response was essentially that this is transitory, nothing to be concerned over, meaning that it may be high now, but it's going to start to decelerate with each passing month, because this is just that economy is booming from all the stimulus effects. But I'm not sure if the inflation will decelerate, and it may remain stubbornly high at this level. And why is inflation important for real estate? Because it will raise mortgage rates. People who remember the 1970s, and certainly the millennial generation, have no idea about the 1970s. But in the 1970s, you went to the grocery store or you pumped at the gas station, and prices were rising and rising and rising every single day. And at that environment, mortgage rates were running at 10%, 12%, at one point 18% mortgage rates. And the reason why the mortgage rate rise when there was high inflation is the lenders who are lending the money that will be returned to them would have lost in value because of inflation. And the only way to compensate for that is to charge higher interest rates. So right now, the mortgage rates are 3%. I think it could reach 3.5% by December of this year because of combination of rising budget deficit and also inflation beginning to pick up. So inflation is already running at 5%. And if we look at the specific items, and I chose the timeline from pre-pandemic to the April data. This morning, we have the latest data on the month of May, but I was unable to incorporate because it just came out this morning. But up to April, what we are finding is that airfare, even though air traffic is returning, is still a little cheaper compared to 1 year before the pandemic. Clothes are a little cheaper. Motor vehicle insurance are tad cheaper, meaning that if you need to renew your auto insurance and they're quoting you a little high, just tell them, you're gonna check with the competitors because it should be a little lower. College tuition on average, there's no change. Maybe many of the universities feel a little guilty about offering online courses last year, and to compensate for that, they're not really raising tuition. Of course, it varies by universities and colleges. Renters rent. So if you hold investment properties or apartment buildings, it's rising around 2%, 2.3%. Meat, if you're a meat eater, you are angry because the prices are rising at 6%. Appliances, so you have a home buyer who's very excited about their new home, but once they have to buy a refrigerator, it is expensive. Staying at a hotel, motel, because many people are doing more short distance travel and not the international travel. So the hotel and motel, actually now they're able to bump up the fees to stay there. Gasoline prices at a 5-year high. And we know that the realtors spend more on gasoline compared to the general population. So it's immediately hitting your pocketbook. Let's focus also on the yellow highlighted ones, because Detroit, the Motor City, new car sales are very important for job creation. But what's happening in the country right now is that people are buying used car and less focus on the new car, as indicated on the price inflation. Used car prices are cheaper, but the price inflation is running at 20%, while the new cars prices are rising only minimally at the moment. This is implying that even as the economy is recovering, there's still some degree of financial anxiety among middle-class families. And if they have financial anxiety and they need a car, they will look for used car rather than new car. So that could be the reason as to why this is the case. Home prices, as I mentioned, rising strongly, but believe it or not, it's not part of the consumer price inflation, so it's not included. And there's more inflation along the way because intermediate price pressures, the pipeline price pressure on the producer prices are also rising. This is for the construction materials. Again, cement, lumber, drywall, all rising, and eventually this will get passed on to the consumers. Another thing that will force up inflation a little high, again, I somewhat disagree with the White House assessment that inflation is transitory and it's going to come down again, because rents are rising at 2%, but I think it's going to soon go back up to 4%. Before the pandemic, there was actually an apartment shortage. So rents were rising about 4%. Soon, I think we will go back up to the 4%, which means it will further add pressure to inflation. Why do I believe the rents will go back up to 4%? Well, because we are seeing rental demand recovering. This is the number of renters in the country. We had an apartment shortage before the pandemic. That once people lost jobs, especially at the restaurants, people working at the hotel, many young people, they went straight to parents' basement. And the rental demand collapsed, so they had to reduce rents. But now, as the economy is recovering, jobs are being created, rental demand is now returning, people are popping out of the basement. So given that rental demand is returning, this rent, I believe, will soon go back up to 4%, which means higher inflationary pressure overall for the consumer price inflation, which then will begin to push up mortgage rates. Now let me turn towards the job market. This is 50 states comparing recently available data, which is as of April, versus March of 2020, right before the pandemic. Michigan, you can see it's down 6.8%. That's total jobs. There's 6.8% fewer jobs in Michigan compared to pre-pandemic. Other states, you see the variation. For example, New York, down 8.7% because Governor Cuomo had a stricter lockdown for a longer period. But that also means that it's hard to get the economy going if you have a lockdown for a longer period. Then you look at places like Idaho and Utah, only 2 states with more jobs today compared to the year before. And what's happening in Idaho and Utah is the governor there said, look, we're not going to have this long lockdown because we need to get the economy going. We know that virus is dangerous, so please be careful out there, but we're not going to shut the economy down. And hence, they have more job creation now compared to before the pandemic. But you see the variation. Hawaii damage, they're down 14% because people are not doing air travel. And Hawaii actually had a system that if you're coming into Hawaii, you have to stay in the hotel room, not go out for 7 days. Who would want to go to Hawaii if you are stuck in a hotel? So the job market was impacted significantly in Hawaii. But again, you see the variation with Michigan essentially underperforming compared to rest of the country. Let me show you a different way to see the job over a longer time horizon. This is a 20-year chart on jobs in the US, and I will go into the greater Detroit market in a second. So from year 2000 to 2010, essentially no job creation except for that little hump. That little hump was artificial because it was a subprime lending job creation, but we had a foreclosure crisis. So that little hump. But from the low point in 2010, America went through a longest job expansion ever. You can say, President Obama, President Trump, 10 straight years of job creation led to lowest unemployment rate across all age groups, across all demographic, ethnicity, racial category, you name it, gender, male, female, lowest unemployment rate right before the pandemic, given the 10 straight years of job creation. But in a single month, we lost all that job. 10 years of progress disappearing in a single month of a lockdown. Then as the economy reopened, some job creation. Places like Utah and Idaho doing much better, Michigan somewhat lagging behind in terms of jobs. But this is a 20-year job picture for the greater Detroit, Warren, Dearborn region. Clearly underperforming compared to the rest of the country. I put that red line as a year 2000. So let me go back to the US, what the rest of the country is doing. See the red line year 2000? Then same in the year 2010, and then the lockdown. But when you see Detroit, it's sort of under that red line to show that it's the difficult, special circumstance in the Detroit area, especially related to the auto industry. So large job losses, in fact, 10 straight years of job losses from the year 2000 to 2010. You saw the foreclosures. And I remember, some of the homes in Detroit, they were selling for $1. But you have to pick it up all the back tax obligations. But the home prices were incredibly cheap. I think the median price in 1 year was around $30,000 in the Detroit city proper. Of course, suburbs, the prices were higher. So it's been quite devastating situation in terms of the job market. But from the low point in 2010, it's been 10 straight years of jobs recovery. Almost getting back up to the red line, but that pandemic hit, you see, bang, you're hard hit, but now trying to recover and not back up to the pre-pandemic level conditions. But even with this condition, given that, again, 10 straight years of job creation, record low mortgage rate, buyers were shopping for home, prices rising strongly in the Detroit region. Jobs are not fully back, but job openings are at a record high. I'm not sure what you see as you are walking around your neighborhood, but when I walk around my neighborhood, I see the sign, help wanted. Please inquire within, but whether it's a cashier job at a store, whether it is at a restaurant, we see so many job openings. Some people are saying these job openings are lower pay industry, and it doesn't really reflect the higher paying industry. But we are also seeing job openings in the computer science, accounting, so many areas there's job openings. But we are not fully back in terms of total job hirings, even though openings are high, because some people are saying that, well, because of COVID, some people are still afraid to come back to the job market. Other people say with the school closures, many parents with school-age kids, they cannot send them to their child care center because it's very expensive. And hence with school closure, they have to stay at home. Others are saying generous unemployment benefits. With unemployment benefit being very generous, people are saying, well, why take up that cashier job when one can actually make more money by filing for unemployment insurance? So many different reasons, but the reality is we have a record high job opening, yet we don't have job market fully back up to normal conditions as of yet. Let me wrap it up with a forecast. So the forecast for home sales is the following. Given the backdrop on the mortgage rates and jobs, those are the two critical factors for home sales. First quarter numbers are in essentially up about 12% from 1 year ago. Second quarter will be massively higher compared to last year. But it's an artificial comparison because last year it was lockdown and virtual tours, not a normal conditions. Third quarter, I think it's gonna match up with last year's figures. But by fourth quarter, sales will be down 10%. So prepare your business anticipation about what's gonna happen. I think it's gonna be down 10% by fourth quarter. For the simple reason, mortgage rates will be higher. We will get more jobs, but the higher mortgage rates will begin to squeeze out some of the potential buyers. But if you believe that what I have indicated about the quarterly forecast is reasonable, what do you get for the annual? In 2021, annual home sales will pop out 10% above last year. And you say, wait a minute, is that really possible? Another way to think about it is this year, we will have 12 months of sales activity. Last year, it was only 10 months of activity. I know that the second half was very strong last year, but still, we missed out on 2 months of activity. This year, we have 12 months of activity. So overall, annual sales this year will be comfortably above last year. My final chart is the following. Jobs are being created. We're moving in the right direction, but people are not seeking new office spaces. Office leasing continues to be negative. Maybe in some areas, there is some positive office leasing, but it's being negated by people who are leaving office and say, we don't need office space anymore. This will fundamentally change some of the dynamics. Residential choices. People can now live 2 counties away from downtown centers, knowing they don't have to commute every day. Because I'm not sure companies will say, come back to office 5 days a week. Those days are long over. I think even before the pandemic, there was a trend towards working from home. But the pandemic simply accelerated that process. I don't know what the new normal will be. Is that come to office 3 days a week, other 2 days work from home, and those 2 days may be Mondays and Friday. So people make it into a long weekend, and hence they said, why am I living so close to downtown centers if I don't have to commute so much? Michigan has many vacation home properties up in the northern section, and they're thriving. There's so much demand for vacation homes because people are saying work from home can also mean work from vacation home. How would the boss know? Or why should the boss care? Because working from anywhere may be good developing. Also consider Twitter. I know there's a huge debate about Twitter free speech or non-free speech policy. Let's separate that away from what they're doing regarding employee policy. Twitter closed their office in San Francisco, and they're essentially saying you can work from anywhere. So someone who grew up in Michigan, went to San Francisco, now begin to wonder, why am I in San Francisco when I can work from anywhere? And I remember the good childhood activity in Michigan, and I know there's a good schooling system. I know it's a great place to raise a family, and I can buy a mansion in Michigan compared to the small townhouse in San Francisco. So affordable regions of the country, I think, will be big beneficiary. Small towns could be benefit. The vacation areas could also benefit, because what we are seeing is that even with jobs recovery, we are not seeing positive office leasing activity, at least as of yet. So given this, I think the affordable Midwest, whether it is Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, there could be some benefit of more affordable market compared to the coastal, very expensive markets. So let me stop sharing. Hold 1 second. Let me go back here. And I think I have stopped sharing. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you. And thank you again to President Katie for giving me this opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yoon. As we spoke a little bit earlier for your presentation, just bringing up the hook because we don't have the answers, and it's been such a crazy couple of years that we're not even sure really what to tell our clients either. So with all of your knowledge, we really appreciate your sharing and breaking it down so we can understand all the aspects. So we're going to look at the chat room to get any questions. So the first one from August, do you know the amount or percentage of mortgages that took advantage of the COVID moratorium?
So in the early months, there were about 5 million homeowners who went to the mortgage forbearance to say that I lost job, I cannot pay mortgage, about 5 million. But with each passing month, the number is declining. And it should be declining because people are finding jobs. So they're coming out of the mortgage forbearance program. But we still have around 2.5 million people in that program. And it's scheduled to end. I mean, I think it's a phase out. I think people could be in that program for around 12 months. So as people are coming out of that program, what happens? Well, let's hope they do find a job and now they can pay mortgages. By the way, it's not one lump sum back mortgage. They just go back on schedule. It's just that now that 30-year mortgage has now become 30-year and 8-month mortgage because whatever amount they missed out. I think everyone knows that. So hopefully people can find jobs. For those who cannot, it does not have to be a foreclosure because you saw the price increases, and given the price increase, they can simply do a normal sale and get some equity, and of course they have to move on to the next home, but I don't think it will lead to the foreclosure situation. But even if it does, there are so many buyers out there who want to buy homes, so that's more inventory, so it's not going to linger in the marketplace for a long time.
Right, right. I get this as a common question from clients wondering, well, I'm just going to wait to sell or wait to buy because there's going to be a crash with all of these. And it's my understanding that, so many people do have that equity. And if they just put their house up for sale, they could still walk away with a few dollars. So, all right, thank you. Question, next one. Considering all the factors with building costs up and the lack of inventory, etc., in the next year, do you think it would would be better to sell or rent it out, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, first, if you have the financial capacity to buy. It's first, there are some cycles here and there, but clearly homeowners over a long period build wealth. I know in Detroit it's more special case because you went through that auto adjustment, industry adjustment, and you saw the 10 straight years of job losses. Very painful. But I think the worst in the auto industry restructuring is over. So it's just a matter of how to ramp up production parts, which means the job creation overall will follow now the national pattern. And hence, what people are buying today, if one has to make a guess, well, the prices will be higher 1 year from now, 2 years from now, and the most definite, say 5 or 10 years from now. So I think there's less concern, but the buy or rent, I think that decision should be not about the financial capacity, but more about the timing. If people need to move in 2 years, maybe they don't need to buy. Just renting makes sense. Or if people just simply don't have the financial resources, they lost the job, then of course, renting should be considered as an option.
Okay, next question is from Stephen. Is the White House planning to remove capital gains exemption from home sales?
So there is currently an exemption up to $500,000 for married couple and $250,000 for a single. For the Midwest region or vast Middle America, I say that's not a concern in terms of capital gains. They will not remove the exemption. They're trying to raise the taxes after the exemption. But it is a concern in California, Seattle area, or even where I live in Washington, where people bought a home 20 years ago, and now they have accumulated, say, $700,000 in housing wealth. Now, if they were to sell it, now they get hit because it's beyond that 500,000 limit, and people have just psychological thing to say, I don't want to pay tax to the government, so they simply don't sell the home, which means that we're not getting the home sales transaction. So impact will be felt along the coast, but not really in the Midwest.
Related to that, what's going on with the 1031 exchange?
We are pushing very hard because the Biden administration is saying 1031 exchange is a loophole to shield taxes. But we say, look, we have a realtor membership. Around 40% have their investment properties, and many do not have normal retirement accounts. People with normal retirement account, they have this tax deferral. But for the realtors who are buying investment properties, only way to get a tax deferral is to use 1031 exchange. So it's simply trying to get that same similar situation of deferring taxes using 1031 exchange. The other part is we need more supply. And White House clearly understands we need more supply, more home building activity. And we say some of the land sales to the builders may not happen because when we look at the number of land sales to the builders, they're using 1031 exchange. So without the land sales, we will be restricted in supply. And again, it's going to hinder the supply and home ownership opportunity for the builders. So we are trying to relay this information to the White House. Maybe they will change some of the thresholds to say 1031 exchange will be available up to a couple of $1 million. But beyond that, maybe they will try to limit it. I'm not sure, but we are educating White House. And the second area is Congress. We want to make sure Congress understands it so they don't pass the legislation. So if the legislation is not passed, then whatever president signs will not include a 1031 exchange removal.
Okay. Next question is from Sharon. Do you think the pandemic will effect on commercial real estate like office buildings and restaurants?
Office, I am somewhat pessimistic. So the vacancy rates will remain elevated, not really go down. Now, fortunately, there's not been an active new office building construction, so that's going to limit supply. But nonetheless, the office vacancy rates remain elevated. Less of a concern in the suburban offices because people do not have to go to downtown. Then they can say, well, maybe if we want to expand, maybe we just expand in the suburban office spaces. But the other areas, I feel positive. Rental commercial properties, I think the demand is returning strongly on the apartment demand. The industrials just booming, build out warehouses, and Amazon want to purchase the warehouse, or there are other people who want to purchase warehouse to distribute goods. And the retail sector is more of the geography. Downtown, I think, could suffer, but the suburbs could actually do well because just consider lunch counter in downtown Detroit. If people are not coming to downtown, it's going to suffer. But people will still want to eat lunch out in the suburbs, so the demand for opening restaurant out in the suburbs could strengthen.
Next question is from Richard. Is the HBA in looking at regulatory costs and investing in the cost of lumber, rising of new homes?
We are constantly in discussion with the National Association of Home Builders on some of the common goals that we want to pursue. One thing that, again, we emphasize is need for housing supply. Now, as part of the equity, since the killing of George Floyd, there's greater focus on the equity, and then there's a possible proposal about homebuyer tax credit to say that, well, let's try to help people of moderate income. Naturally, you will help more minority household with a homebuyer tax credit so that they can have the down payment available at the closing table, and maybe this will facilitate some home ownership opportunities. But we say, well, that is insufficient because homebuyer tax credit just simply means it's going to push up prices and make it even more difficult for home buyers. So the homebuyer tax credit is a great idea, but it has to be combined with increasing supply. And whether it is preserving 1031 exchange, removing regulatory costs, we talk about the lumber costs rising, but people say regulatory costs is actually adding about $70,000 to the home building, while lumber costs right now is adding about additional $20,000 or so. So any reduction in regulatory costs will greatly facilitate bringing more supply.
Wow, I had no idea it was that much in regulatory cost. Well, that puts a different spin on it then. Okay, last question that we have is from, and get out your crystal ball. So do you have an overall forecast for 2022?
Yeah, very good question. And just for my time frame, it's the last question. So 2022, economy will continue to expand. This job creating momentum first is self-perpetuating. And second, some level of infrastructure spending bill will be passed. That's additional spending boost to the economy. It's not a free lunch. We're getting in terms of higher interest rates environment. So the job market will continue to move. I think the U.S. Could be fully back up to the pre-pandemic condition, say by end of 2022. So job market is very positive, but the interest rate will be high. I mentioned 3.5% by December. Maybe we will get something close to 4%. Only relieving factor for the Detroit area is that higher interest rate generally affects the high cost regions of the country first, not the affordable regions. So even as the interest rate rises, it may do less damage in the Detroit area given the greater affordability. And housing prices in no danger of a decline, but maybe it will moderate to more like 5% price appreciation in 2022.
Okay, still 4%, even if it rose to that number, it's still historically low. I remember my first mortgage was almost 9%. And we thought that was great. So we're still going to hang in there. Well, if that is it for the questions, Dr. Yoon, we really appreciate your time. Probably the busiest man. Thank you for taking the time out to help educate, give us a sense of relief and a view of what the market's going to do over the next couple of years. So thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, as a wrap up, I just wanted to remind you of a couple things that are coming up. Our RPAC first in-person event. We're so again, our summer soiree is July 13th, so be sure to buy your tickets for that. If you've ever been to an event at Terry Spiro's home, it is something definitely to remember. She is a fantastic. And August 19th is our drive-in movie fundraiser, so please get your tickets for that. And again, thank you so much for being here, and I hope that everyone was able to get a nugget that they can share with their clients and do well in your. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks again.